All right. So, Charles, I don't think we've given the kind of gravitas that is required as far as the plight of many black Americans over history. But one of the things I want to do as well is I want to advocate for a minute on behalf of the white community. And this is going to be a little bit more sensitive and a little bit more delicate. And the reason why I want to do this is this. If you're going to ask somebody to change, then you've got to show them that you understand their motivations. So I think we did the best we could to honor the reality of what many black Americans go through. And as a white man, I want to be sensitive to it. I want to honor that. I want to now be, in a sense, an advocate for the white community, because there are grievances that the white community has, or concerns that are really very rarely addressed on television. Now, I happen to watch CNN, and there's Van Jones, and there's Don Lemon.
But I have a question before
please.
you get into that.
Yeah.
Do you think they're real legitimate concerns, or they're just impediments?
Both. Probably both.
All right.
Yeah, and we'll see. And you're totally free to push back.
And I will.
Of course I will. But I mentioned Don Lemon and Van Jones. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, of course.
Very, impressive, educated, well-spoken individuals who I think do a really excellent job. In fact, especially Don Lemon has blown me away in the past with his level of courage and personal disclosure. I think he's an incredible asset to our news group. And yet, although they speak eloquently to the plight of black Americans, I don't think there's anyone except these, right-wing, Fox News guys that are speaking to the needs of the white community. So I, as a non-Fox News person, want to see if we can do it in a respectful way. All right. One of the frustrations I hear from members of the white community is this. There doesn't seem to be an appreciation from the black community for the fact that although there was slavery in this country, white Americans did not invent that. Slavery has been going on since man has been on this planet. It started with the ancient Hebrews 5,000 years ago were enslaved by the Egyptians.
Is that a justification?
Not at all. My point is, white Americans didn't invent it, but white Americans did end slavery in this country. They fought a civil war to end it, and many lost their lives. And so, I won't say good or bad, but some people who didn't think, some pretty insensitive people engaged in slavery, and some pretty conscientious people ended it. So white Americans played an enormous role in the black emancipation, and Abraham Lincoln, obviously.
A certain group of white Americans did.
Well, the Civil War was fought by millions of people.
Yeah, but there were a lot of white Americans that pushed, that's what the Civil War was about.
And we won.
Yeah.
We, the North won.
So we were fortunate, that, it prevailed in to get rid of racism. But, there was a division between half of white Americans wanted it, or half of white Americans didn't, or, a certain percentage.
Well, it was the darkest chapter in our country's history.
Sure.
And what I learned that was interesting is back in 1776, when they were signing the Declaration of Independence and then the Constitution afterwards, the issue of slavery arose, and they agreed at the time not to address it. It was so incendiary that had they addressed it then, we would never have been a nation. They said, let's put it on hold for 80 years. I think it was 80 years. And then they, of course, came back 80 years later, and that's when the Civil War happened. So white Americans did see the horror of slavery and fought a war to end it. Now, I'm not saying that every single soldier in the North was an egalitarian, black-loving white. I'm simply saying that white people played a huge role, a major role, in fact, a primary role, in liberating blacks from slavery. And there are people that...
Who was going to do it if they didn't, huh? If that certain percentage of white people didn't?
Well,
why I'm asking you that is it's almost like you sound proud of that white people somehow did the right thing suddenly. And I'm just wondering, okay, do you want a medal for that? I mean, what is it?
Well, I don't think I want a medal, but I think there's many people in the white community that would simply like that acknowledged when there's all this current of criticism as to the way things are, an acknowledgement that we played a huge role in doing the right thing and elevating this country. That was a huge step for us as a moral society. I don't think that I don't know of a country right now that allows slavery on a legal basis. There's no one in the world that does that. I mean, there's white slavery. There's what's the word I'm looking for? Human slavery still, human trafficking, which is a huge problem.
Right.
But it's under the table.
Yeah.
But the point is, it was a huge step for our country. I think there's a section of white America who would like the black community to say, you know something, we have issues and we have challenges, but you know something, we've been working at this for a long time and you played your role in that?
I mean, that sounds well and good. I appreciate that perspective. But when black people see, you know, white police officers, you know, abusing and sometimes killing black people still today, we think, yeah, slavery is gone, but, you know, there's still this sort of hand of discrimination that's active and working in society. And so it's still, you know, a lot of ways to go. And, you know, it's like, you know, what can I say? It's, yeah, it's not slavery anymore, but there's still this sort of mental and emotional abuse that's happening, and sometimes it manifests, it's physical among black people. So, yeah, I mean, I get your point, but, you know, let's move on.
All right,
Go ahead.
fair enough.
What's next?
So you mentioned this whole notion of white police officers shooting black young men.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to deny that happens. It absolutely does.
Sure.
It's on the nightly news every night. The question that many in the white community have is, why is the black community so focused when a white police officer shoots a black suspect, and they're not as focused when exponentially more black young men get murdered every year, every week, every day in the inner cities of this country?
Because blacks are aware of, and we've talked about this before, that inner cities is a situation that's sort of set up by the dominant race, by the white community, where blacks are in this situation where they have to sort of struggle against one another just to survive. And when that happens, yeah, you're going to get, you know, abuse within the race. And it's just an effort to survive and to get by. I mean, they've done studies where, you know, whenever you even with animals, when you herd them into a small group, close them in and limit resources, they cannibalize each other. I mean, that's just a reality. And so again, you know, blacks understand that. The whites seem to think, oh, as I say, they use it as a self-fulfilling prophecy to say, oh yeah, that's the way they are. So you know, we're not going to do anything to really change that. But if
in a sense, they've been set up to fail.
Yeah, essentially.
With the conditions.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say this is the first time you've ever said that to me, at least that I remember. And, you know, I had some energy around the fact that, you know, the black community is its own worst enemy because of the assaults, rapes, robberies, murders that happen in the inner city. And yet, in a sense, this country, through white privilege, through the refusal to acknowledge our role in your history, has created an untenable situation for many black Americans.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the same thing would happen with whites if they were herded into sort of a restricted, you know, low resource environment. I mean, what do you think they do?
That's interesting. And as the violence continues, then in a certain the minds of certain members of the white community, they say, oh look, they're violent. Well, they can't be trusted. Right. Oh, they're dangerous. I'm afraid. They need to be controlled. And it feeds this never-ending cycle of misunderstanding and mistrust. It's heavy shit. Yeah. Pardon my French.
But clearly, you know, I think intelligent whites who, you know, are heart-centered see the challenge in that. But others who don't want to see it, they use it as a justification. So again, you know, it's really a consciousness thing. You know, people who are more woke recognize, you know, this is a situation. The situation causes that inner city situation causes this sort of, you know, cannibalism among blacks. But you know, they realize that that's not who these people are. That's not who we are.